All right, this homework has been a long time coming in a video. I'm going to talk to you today about the block and strap homework that I give almost everybody who comes into my office. And I wanted to be able to show you in the video the do's and don'ts of when you're squeezing the block and pressing into the strap. So the reason why we have this homework is in order to stabilize the pelvis, so that other anatomy that we need to be doing movements with, for example the psoas, is able to release and fully go through its range of motion when we're walking, which then allows the pelvis to stay stabilized, so then the pelvis isn't rotating while we're walking and creating instability in that SI joint, which gives so many of us trouble both while pregnant and not pregnant. So the reason why we use both a block and a strap is that we're stabilizing the front half of the pelvis when we're squeezing the block, and we're stabilizing the back half of the pelvis when we're pressing into the strap. This is very similar to a lens of other professionals. One of the differences between how I teach this homework and somebody else on your self-care team might be teaching this homework is that rather than squeezing and holding the block or pressing into the strap for 10 seconds, I actually have you do 10 reps. So you're gonna lightly hold the block on your exhale, and on your inhale, you're gonna actually do your squeeze into the block and activate the anatomy around the pelvis that we're trying to activate to stabilize. I teach it this way because it's very hard to hold the block or press into the strap for 10 seconds without also holding your breath while you do it. And by doing it in reps, we're constantly feeding oxygen flow through the blood, which is going to help that anatomy that is not activating the way it can functionally to start to re-engage, because we're also giving it adequate blood and oxygen flow while you're doing this homework. The third piece that I want to go over before I start demoing is the foot position. So we're going to do 10 reps, but we're going to do 10 reps in 3 different foot positions. So one foot position, let me turn this way, one foot position is going to have your feet parallel. One position is going to have them rotate out. If you've been in my office, I will say laterally rotated, and then I will use the description that they are turning out like a penguin. And then the last round will be with them rotated in, that's medially rotated, and you'll hear me use the visual cue as turned in like a pigeon. So we're gonna do a set of each of those with 10 reps each. So I'm gonna place the block in between my knees, but I want you to still be able to see my low back. Okay, so I'm going to place the block in between my knees. I have my heels in line with my ischial tuberosity, so they're in line with what you would hear the term sit bone if you've ever been in a yoga class. And I have the block in between my knees at the top of my leg. And I'm going to hold this arm up just so you can see here, but if I were doing this at home by myself, I would just have my arms down by my side. So just so you can see my low back, I'm going to take a nice big inhale. And the exhale, I'm squeezing block. And then you can't see it, but I'm pretending and I'm scooping in and up right here, right above my pelvic bone, that pubic bone. Releasing a little on the inhale, exhaling, squeezing the block. Scooping in and up at the transverse. There's a natural engagement of the pelvic diaphragm, that pelvic floor muscles, but I'm not actively engaging them. Inhaling, exhaling, squeezing the block, scooping right here, in and up. This is what you're not seeing. This is the most common thing I see. Inhaling, exhale, squeeze, and when you're squeezing, you want to win an A+, so you squeeze here and you're pressing here, and everything is like tightening all over. And what that's doing is it's activating the compensation that we've just addressed in the office. So in order to not get that all reactivated and pulling on your low back and giving you that SI joint pain, I want you to try to not do this. when you're squeezing. So again, inhale, exhale, squeezing, but you're not seeing my rib cage move. You're only seeing if you're just noticing that you know I'm squeezing here, you know I'm skipping here, but I'm not moving into what would feel like a Pilates engagement, or would feel like if you're used to yoga doing cat-cow, that you would be pressing as if you were really trying to activate your whole torso into going into that angry cat. I am stabilizing here, but I'm not engaging here. So you're gonna do 10 reps like that with your feet parallel, 10 reps with them laterally rotated like a penguin, and 10 reps with them medially rotated like a pigeon. If you don't have a block, you can use your small kitchen saucepan with the handle, and you can hold the handle in between your knees. If you're pregnant, you're most likely going to do this seated because you can't lay flat. So if you're doing this seated, you're going to pull the flesh of the glutes and the muscle, your glute muscles away, and you're going to make sure you're sitting on that tuberosity, feeling that bony landmark of your sit bone on your seat, and you're going to feel that your tailbone is floating. We're not tucking on the chair. We're sitting up nice and with proper alignment on that sit bone. And then you can do this while you're seated in the chair. Try to have your knees either at a parallel or slightly lower than your hip. So in the chair, you don't want your knees up like this. You want them to be seated, you're like this in the chair. So imagine I'm in a chair, my feet are on a floor. You want them to either be parallel at the hip, or you want them to be a little lower, like you can see ends up being the angle of my hip while I'm laying here on the massage table. So to stabilize the back of your pelvis, especially if you're having that SI joint pain, you're going to place a strap around your thigh. Let me see where this one ends up on me. I'm going to loosen it just a hair. You're going to have it a little bit tighter so it feels like you're knocking knees a little bit. And what you're seeing me do is I'm testing that when I actually press all my weight out into the strap, that my knee and my hip bone are in alignment. If you start there, when you press, your knees end up going wider than your pelvis. And everything else is going to be the same. You're going to take a nice big inhale. On your exhale, you're going to press out. You're going to scoop in and up. And as you're scooping in and up that transverse abdominis, you're going to feel that there's a natural lift to that pelvic diaphragm. But what you're noticing is you're not seeing me go like this. I'm not rocking the pelvis through an anterior and a posterior tilt. I'm getting myself in neutral, and I'm leaving my pelvis there and only pressing out at the thigh and engaging that transverse abdominis. So how do you know that your pelvis is in neutral? You can place your fingertips on your pubic bone and the palm of your hand on your ASIS. That's when we say put your hand on your hip. You find that bony part and you place your hand there, and you want them to be in the same plane. So if I were to have an anterior tilt, let me put this leg down so you can see it. If I were to have an anterior tilt, you would notice that my fingertips are lower than my palm up here on the ASIS, and I would have a gap. Now, if I were to exaggerate into a posterior tilt, you could see it. Could you see that? My fingertips rock up, and the palms of my hands come down, and I have no space back here. So to find that neutral, you want them in the same space. There should be a small little lift here, depending on your body composition. You may or may not be able to see the lip, but there is a little bit of a gap there. And again, so squeezing the block, pressing into the strap. This shouldn't be moving. You shouldn't be rocking your pelvis through that motion. And then if you're watching this and you're one of my prenatal clients, just to help give you that little bit of extra incentive to do this homework, this transverse abdominis, it's tubular. Imagine that it's like a pool tube, and you're in the middle of the tube, and the pool tube is around the outside of you, like you're in the center of the donut hole. And when you're activating that horizontal muscle fiber, you're practicing for when it's time to push your baby out. So when it's time to push your baby out, your uterus has muscle fibers going this way. It's smooth muscle. You can't make it contract like you can your bicep or your hamstring. It's smooth muscle like your heart and your colon. And it's going to do the pressing of your baby down. What you're doing when you activate that belt, that is your transverse abdominis that sits above your pubic bone, is it's going to press the baby's head down so it gets under the pubic bone faster. So even my first time mamas, when they were pushing, when I was working as a doula for 8 years, we would do the cue skinny jeans. We all know how to suck it in and up right there, to zip up our skinny jeans on our bloated girl day. And I would just watch for the lower belly to be doing that little bit of a lift. And if they got tired, I would just tap and go, skinny jeans. And they go, oh yeah. And they start doing it again. And we didn't have long pushing stages unless there was something going on in the pelvis that wasn't resolved. So if we've got an aligned pelvis and we've got an aligned baby's head down those psoas muscles, the psoas anatomy creates the railroad track from the baby down into the pelvis. So if all of that is functioning optimally, all you have to do, if you want to actively help your baby be born during the pushing stage, is zip up those skinny jeans and let your uterus do the rest. It was made to do this. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I look forward to seeing you next time in the office. Have a great night.